I want to welcome you to this edition of the Mayor's Brief. With me today, I have Dr. Steve Ellis, who is the new superintendent for the Nash Rocky Mountain School System. And that's something I guess we'll talk about. I assume it's still the Nash Rocky Mountain School System, but I think it's now going to be called the Nash County System. Anyway, regardless, welcome, Dr. Ellis, and I appreciate you taking the time to come.
It's good to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you. Well, these are the most interesting of times, and so you're newly appointed. Not a unanimous vote. Couldn't even get that make that easy. So tell me, what's it been like to be inserted into the Nash Rocky Mountain School System? I think we're dropping the name. Probably ought to talk about that a little bit as to whys. And then is Edgecombe County Rocky Mountain still going to be included as part of the school system or not? I mean, that's just a lot. There's a lot right there. It's probably 50 minutes worth of conversation there.
Okay, so where do I start?
I'll tell you what, let's back up. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay,
let's just go
right.
there, and then we'll go right on into the
right.
Rocky Mountain stuff.
So I started education, 29 years ago as a teacher assistant.
Okay.
Planned on going to law school, was in Pitt County at the time. Was a teacher assistant for 2 years. Ended up loving education.
Okay.
Stayed in it, became a middle school teacher in Wilson County. I coached 4 sports, loved it. Went to East Carolina, got my admin degree, and at 28 years old, became an assistant principal at a high school.
Okay.
Did that for about 4 years, then became a principal at a middle school for 4.5 years.
Okay.
Became a high school principal for 8 years. And then I was a special assistant to the superintendent, and now I have become superintendent of Nash County Public Schools.
Nash County Public Schools.
As of July 1.
So it just happened. Okay.
It is the new name.
Need to get used to it.
That's
Nash
right.
County Public High School. Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that has really been concerning to me in my newly elected position as mayor has been, first of all, I believe that education is the great leveler of opportunity.
It is.
Where we can create, if we're going to create one thing that changes a kid's life, it is to give them an education that can compete with anybody from any socioeconomic background.
Agreed.
So with that said, we're looking at challenges now in COVID-19 where we've had to rely a lot on technology. And in some cases where I've talked to principals and teachers, they can't find their kids,
Right.
which makes it hard. And then we've got a whole new school opening of the next school year that we probably ought to talk about, because I think there's some uncertainty as to how all that's going to work. So, how do you, first of all, you walk in as superintendent, you've got a somewhat contentious name change associated with it, and now you got COVID-19 that you're contending with. And then how do you make sure that there's equity in education for everybody? Wow. And I'll tell you what, I'll just go over here and sit down and just, let you formulate for about an hour and a half.
To me, so you get in this business, like you said, educate
Sure.
kids, it creates pathways for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you should be doing. I didn't get a chance to even take in a 6-5 vote. So
Right.
COVID hit. I visited every school in 2 weeks, and probably the last day of visits, Friday, was a call from the governor saying we were going to have a meeting on Saturday about the decision of what we're going to do with schools. So no more than 2 weeks. The next Monday, we've closed schools.
Okay.
So really, it's about still staying focused on, all right, I can't complain about the pandemic and all the other issues that probably surround, past histories of Nash County schools. You just
Right.
can't. You can't worry about that. So I was lucky to have a good team around me. We focused on getting those kids, at least educating the masses, because we still haven't been able to reach all kids.
Right.
And moving forward, I think that's our conversation. We've got to figure out how we do a better job. If we're going to do the remote learning packets or any way we deliver education out, we got to figure out a better way to do that. And I think so far this has been a test pattern. I think it's been a test pattern for everyone. But we've already started on the restart plan as of today. We've got community members, board members on board, parent advisory committees, just trying to figure out, so what is it going to look like next year when we open up these schools.
Well, what is it going to look like?
So the governor has
Maybe.
given
Today, right? I'm sure it changes.
The governor's given us probably three plans, A, B, and C. One
right.
is back to normal. One is a remote plan, which would be C. B is the hybrid plan, which means you could either bring half of those students in, half could be remote. So we're given three of those options. So our job right now is to figure out, so what does each plan look like for us?
Right.
So right now you're trying to put the pieces to this puzzle together, and hopefully, I'm thinking July 17th, we'll get some sort of an answer to figure out how we move forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's going to be a challenge, obviously, because Nash County just had the highest number of COVID instances since we've been tracking it back in March. All the numbers I'm looking at are predicting that really we're not seeing a crest until September, maybe even October. So that just puts it right in the sweet spot, right in a more difficult spot for you anyway. So, tell us a little bit about what the, call it the hybrid plan might look like, because that sounds to me like ultimately maybe the most practical, not knowing enough, but I know this.
Right.
Two extremes, usually the middle is where the truth and the sweet spot is.
And really the plan B would be you could actually bring half of your population back in the school.
Okay.
So if you have a school of 400, there's going to be a 200 limit, social distancing, 6 feet apart in a classroom, things like taking temperature checks when students arrive in the morning, same as with teachers.
Sure.
No eating in the lunchroom, it would have to be brought to the students. Bathroom breaks would be, totally 6 feet apart, certain times of the day. I mean, it's totally different than what we consider school.
Right.
And even that, the transportation concern for us is if we can only put about half on a bus, so what do you do? I mean, that's going to be tough for us to manage, because I'm sure we probably bus about 30-some% of our population to schools. So that's going to be an issue we have to face.
So what are you hearing from teachers and from principals? I mean, I know, and again, I know you jumped in head first. You're probably just now getting that first breath of air after touching the bottom a little bit.
I don't know if I took a breath yet, but yeah. So we put a survey out.
Yeah.
And basically it's a third, and a third.
Okay.
A third feel comfortable coming back, a third don't, and a third feel like a hybrid option would be the best.
Right.
So that's why when we met today, we basically said we're just creating a plan for all of them.
Okay. Right.
So, because you're still going to give the option, in my opinion, to a parent, if they don't feel comfortable sending their student back,
right,
we're going to have a virtual option for that parent.
Right.
If you feel like you want that child to be in school, then we're going to figure out a way to maneuver a student through that building, either one day, one week, 2 weeks, off and on, A/B day.
Right.
And that's going to really, that's how we're going to figure this one out.
So is there any, from your perspective, from, conversations you've had with your staff, your team, how do they feel like last year ended? I mean, I know literally schools were shut down like next week. So it wasn't a whole lot of prep opportunity or even an opportunity to disseminate to your population. This is how we're just going to look going forward. But how do you feel like that move to technology worked for the total system?
Well, I think that when it comes to equipment, an LMS system that you can have, Canvas, Google Classroom, Seesaw, there's a lot of systems that we have in place for teachers to get on for students to have access to. We have that. Our problem was, broadband, internet capacity. We can track basically how many students have been online through our LMS system now. So if we had about 70% of all high school kids on a course online every day, you still have 30% that didn't.
Right.
So our question is, so what do we have to do? To me, this option of virtual is never going to go away now. It's going to be something in the forefront. So we need to figure out a way with municipalities, communities to find out how do we bring that broadband here? Right. Because, I live in Bailey, so my internet is spotty. Right. So if I had a student that was trying to get online with Canvas to do a course, it's not going to work.
Right.
So, and we've tried all the options of hotspots, and we even talked about buses with internet. But it's still that big broadband piece that I can't do anything about.
I mean, what's the student population in, call it, metropolitan's probably a very loose term considering our area, but in population cities and towns that may have access to broadband, if you had to guess. And I know that's an ish.
So I'm thinking we have 14,000 students.
Okay.
If we're talking about some of the students that didn't have access, I'm thinking it might be as much as 2,000 students.
Okay. So a significant number to the total.
Because, I mean, we have access to hotspots.
Right.
We gave those out. We gave those out to teachers, but the hotspot's not going to really matter if it doesn't have,
Right.
broadband connection.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a concern. And that, as an educator, I don't have control over that. So I've just got to be the cheerleader saying, we really have to get something done about, Nash County being able to offer some of these services.
Right.
Because I know where I live, it's not offered. Even if I wanted to pay for it, it's not offered.
Right.
So,
Although I believe Nash County did approve maybe last year, a couple of months ago, an initiative to try to bring broadband into parts of the county, Bailey, Spring Hope, Middlesex, Nashville, and so on and so forth.
and I think there are some towers there's going to be a conversation about some towers.
Right.
that
I'm not sure exactly where all that
Right.
happens to be right now, but
Right.
anyway, maybe there's something coming forward. But that population would be much greater then.
Correct.
So one of the big things that's of concern to me, right? I want to see economic development for the area. I believe that we're going to have economic development in the area. Of course, I want it to be Rocky Mount. That's the home team. And one of the issues that we have, or not issues, one of the things that people look at, they look at your school system and how is it performing. And so we have historically not tested as well as I think most people would like. And I use testing deliberately.
We should.
Yeah, because I don't believe that it is the school system itself. I believe we have great teachers, great administrators. I believe that we are producing scholars that are, participate in the Jefferson program, Park program, the Moorhead, and so on and so forth. But when you're looking at a third of your population, at least in the city of Rocky Mount, that are living in poverty or beneath poverty, that are really worried about where they're going to stay. Couch surfing's a thing. Food insecurity is a real thing. It's hard to get that population group at a level that they can compete with someone who's, had a full night's sleep and full belly and not worried about where their bed's going to be. So I go through that really to point out, I believe that it's a community challenge, educating our young, not just something that we expect professionals like you to do, although somebody's got to lead the charge.
Right.
So how can communities participate and help you as a superintendent and help our educators out there in the field be successful? Because it's in all of our best interest that even the lowest performing student be at a high level, because if that happens, we can accomplish some great things, I believe.
Right. And I think my concern is we are considered a low-performing district, I think maybe for the past 5 years.
Okay.
So on our end, as a district, we've already started creating a district plan, and my goal is to have high expectations. So
Sure.
we're going to make sure we raise the bar higher. And then for those students who are at risk, or I would call more fragile students, you got to build in
I
some
heard somebody
sorts
call
of,
that students with potential.
there you go. Okay. So, but you gotta build in support systems, whether it be community, churches, to get these people involved with these students. Back in my former district, we had an issue with African American students, males.
Okay.
So we started an organization called Gentlemen's Agreement, where black males in the community came and mentored students. And it started with about 12 kids at an alternative school. In 3 years, it turned out to be 240 some kids.
Right.
By us bringing community members into our schools, first community members start realizing that we're doing a pretty good job. And what we're trying to do is help these students. And we started this rotation of people coming in and out. And then the conversation begins, so Dr. Ellis, what can I help you with?
Right.
We got to bring community partners back in schools. We had a meeting probably a few months before COVID started where we wanted churches to start having places where kids could come and use their Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Because we're providing the laptops, the computers, they can use Wi-Fi.
Which is worthless if I can't if I can't tie
But
into the
some of the
internet.
local churches had those hotspots,
Right.
so that's another community partner. And it's for us, we've got to make sure when kids enter that building, they have high expectations, but then they need to understand they're gonna be able to go in many opportunities, business world, college, military, but we've got to make sure we do a better job
Right.
of promoting those areas, because I just want, more than anything in our district plan, it's about equity, it's about creating better teachers, it's about that achievement gap. And it's not about lowering any standards. It's really raise the bar and then put in those, like I said, those safety nets for some of these students, because everybody didn't start on the same page.
Right.
And as long as we can start providing these resources, but then still expect high expectations from you, then I think we're going to get to where we need to be.
So talk a little bit more about the gentleman's agreement or gentleman's club, because, early on after I had been sworn into office, spent some time studying just the issue, who's the lowest performing,
Right.
how do you help those individuals with that group? And, really that's just the bottom line, right? That's
Right.
CQI is just that, it's a continuing quality improvement. So there's always something at the bottom that you're trying to raise to the top, which means the next level's at the bottom, and hopefully you climb upward. Saw a lot of great programs that were speaking to black males in particular. So I'd like to know, were there any test results? I mean, 3 years
We
is...
had our average of students, which, I laugh because we've got data for everything now. You
Sure.
can track any kid. What we would do is we would put a kid in this gentleman's agreement program for probably 3 years. We started it first in the high school, then we started trickling it down to the middle school to bring those kids up to probably about a 4 or 5 year stint under the
Right.
gentleman's agreement. Our studies show that GPAs, attendance, all that would raise just by one person having a mentor in school.
Right.
Now, the hard part was getting the mentors.
Sure.
But once we established a set group of gentlemen that would come in,
Right.
and it was tough, but
Right.
it proved successful. We even started, my last year, we started a girls organization called Her Pride.
Okay.
So we started in the high school with African-American females.
Right.
So the issue is targeting the students that that are having the concerns.
Right.
Build those supports. That was one of those supports.
And it
which
may
was
very well be
gentleman's agreement.
Caucasian, maybe very well
Yeah,
be Latino.
but it's whatever but it is.
We've
It's the
spoken of
kids
an
you're
African American population, but it's really...
But it's the kids you're trying to reach for a certain
Right.
goal, which is what we're trying to do.
Right.
And I definitely want to bring that here because we've got a whole bunch of community. When I went to those churches, I was amazed to have. All we did was put an email out that we needed some hot spots. Can we have a talk?
Right.
I had 12 pastors
Right.
meeting. with
Right.
me.
Right.
So get that energy.
Right.
Right. Give them kids.
Right.
Help us out.
Well, they're built for community.
Right.
They are communities.
Right.
Churches are communities by their very nature.
And then you want also these kids to experience something different. I mean, you want them to go to the colleges, you want them to go on field trips, you want to take them places that, they haven't been.
Right.
And that's what helped us in gentleman's agreement. We had field trips, we had things lined up for these students.
Well, that's funny because a number of the other programs that I have seen and looked at, it was a carrot and a stick.
Right.
And there was a look, the house I grew up in, the expectation was X, and it never moved. Well, if it moved north, always. And so, and below the expectation is just a problem. I mean, it's
Right.
just unacceptable.
Right.
So that mere accountability, and as Reagan said, you inspect what you expect. I'm sure there's other people who've used that before. That really does matter, and there's an accountability does motivate people. I mean, it even motivates me today. Just knowing that I have folks that I have to answer to for whatever reason. And so,
And I agree. And I think it is, to me, it's a simple concept because what we do is we make education so out there.
Right.
When it's about educating students,
right,
teachers, making teachers better,
Right.
teacher capacity, get teachers in, strengthen them. If it's social emotional learning they need to meet the needs of these students, then professional development, discipline practices, all those things you put in those teachers because you're not going to, there are no programs that are going to be the substitute of a very good teacher in a classroom.
That's right.
And that's it. I've been doing this 30 years and it's not a program. It's a very good teacher that makes the difference in that child's life.
Well, I think we all remember those. I can name for
of
you
course.
the top 4 or 5 that really
Yeah.
touched me for whatever reason.
And the bad ones you don't even know.
I have no recall. I mean, I really.
You never know.
Did you have who?
Yeah.
You know, no, I don't know. I made it through. That's all that mattered to me
right.
at that moment, and so I didn't have to repeat it. All right, so I'm going to ask the hard question. I know you probably don't have a crystal ball either, and it's kind of odd that the mayor would ask this, right? But, you know, do you think that Edgecombe County is going to continue to participate in the Nash County public school system, at least as it relates to the population that resides in Rocky Mountain? And actually, it's not the entirety of the population of Rocky Mountain. It's
2,000 students.
something
maybe.
like that, and it's not, doesn't even match the city limits.
Right. So since I'm the new one coming in, I have no idea.
Sure.
I do know the name change was to trigger some things. But
Sure.
As far as how they move forward, I don't know.
Right.
When I was hired, I told them that I'm just here to educate students
right.
that are in our school system.
Tell me who I'm educating, and
That's
I'll
right.
make it happen.
Because I don't want to get involved in that.
Right. No, I understand. And, you know, it's the legacy of an old municipal school system,
Seemed to
really.
be.
Really bottom line. So what other insight, what other things would you like to share with our audience today? And
I just think the insight is that this is an opportunity for Nash County Public Schools to rebrand.
right.
When I met with principals, I told them up front that I was never considered low performing.
Right.
Nor would I ever want to be called that. And I told them, I said, now, if you want to be a low performing principal, I'll make sure that you're somewhere else. I don't want to speak that language. Mm-hmm. So in order to, not have that thrust upon us as a low performing district, we've got to make changes.
Sure.
But I think we need to look at what we've done,
Mm-hmm.
how we change, and then just be transparent about how we operate.
Right.
We started parent advisory committees, principal meetings when we discuss these issues about us. So I think that's one of my platforms is just getting the community involved because what you were saying is exactly right. If we make a very good school system, I'm only going to make Nash County a greater place to be.
Right.
And I want kids to be able to say when they graduate from Nash County schools, they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to stay here in Nash County because during my high school days, I was exposed to this company. I'd like to go to Nash Community College and stay here and be here because if we get a better group of kids graduating, it's only going to rise everyone else over here.
That's right.
Right. And that's my goal is for them to stay, but to make sure when they, we're going to have a new slogan I want to come out with is students come in to learn, but they leave to achieve.
Right.
So when you leave Nash County Schools, it's not that, what did you get? Did you just get a diploma? No, you got a career. And that's what you got to think about. So we've got to plant that in those students when they start in kindergarten. That
Right.
You're just not here to play school. This actually leads to something. And it's
Right.
going to lead to a career that you're going to make in life that's going to make you successful. And I feel like if we have the community on board, we've got teachers, we've got principals, pastors, everyone in this community together, that's going to help us rebrand and make sure that we're where we need to be.
Well, look, I'm here, stand ready to help you in any way
Perfect. I'll
to
remember
accomplish
that.
all those goals because it is important, not just to Rocky Mountain, but to our area and certainly for our kids. I mean, it's just what we need to be doing. So thank you so much for joining us
I
today.
appreciate being here. Thank you.
Yes, sir.